Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 4th annual Mega Unity event, One People, One Heart, celebrating the life and teachings of the Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory. The Rebbe is considered to be the most phenomenal Jewish personality of modern times. He is the one individual more than any other, singularly responsible for stirring the conscience and spiritual awakening of world Jewry. There is a story told about the Rebbe's early life that seems to be almost symbolic of everything that was to follow. When he was 9 years old, the young Menachem Mendel courageously dove into the Black Sea and saved the life of a little boy who had rowed out to sea and lost control of his small craft. That sense of other lives in danger seems to have dominated his consciousness, of Jews drowning in assimilation, ignorance, or alienation, and no one hearing their cries. Jews on campus, in isolated communities, and under a repressive regime. A rare and radiant Torah luminary, his legacy of love and his ocean of insightful teachings continue to resonate with relevancy 27 years after his physical passing, which we commemorate tonight, a few days before his 27th yahrzeit on the 3rd of Tammuz. On behalf of the 25 Chabad centers of Washington State and the Chabad centers of the states of Oregon, Alaska, Idaho, as well as British Columbia, we welcome you to Light Points, 3 unique and powerful insights from the Rebbe's teachings that will inspire and elevate our lives.
I would like to introduce my grandfather, Rabbi Shalom Ber-Levitin, Director of Chabad of the Pacific Northwest, to share in words of welcome and blessing.
Welcome, my dear friends, to tonight's event, which marks the 27th yahrzeit of our beloved Rebbe. And also tonight is the 28th of Sivan, which marks another historical event which is transformative to the whole world community, is when our beloved Rebbe of blessed memory and the Rebbetzin of blessed memory came to these shores in 1941 from Europe, 80 years. My good Rebbetzin, my beloved wife, and I had the distinct schus a privilege and honor to be chosen by the Rebbe as his personal emissaries to the Pacific Northwest, going now on 49 years. Over the 49 years, a lot has happened here in the Northwest with the state of Washington, Oregon, Alaska, British Columbia, Alberta, Montana, and Idaho, where there today are dozens and dozens of Chabad houses and many, many shluchim and shluchas couples who have transformed the Pacific Northwest into an oasis of Yiddishkeit and beyond into the general community with the seven Noahide laws for all humanity. Thank you for participating in this event, and we should all be blessed by the Rebbe's guidance, and we should be merit to be reunited with him with the coming of Mashiach, though should be speedily in our time.
I would like to thank tonight's underwriter, Mr. Stephen Barrell, who for the third year in a row had the heart and vision to see the importance of bringing Jews together in honor of the Rebbe's yahrzeit. Stephen, this is an incredible zchut honor for you, and it will no doubt generate for you tremendous blessing in every facet of your life. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Barrell.
Rabbi Shalom Ber Levitin, my rabbi and my teacher. Rabbi Moshe Kvetenik, my rabbi and my teacher. Rabbi Shimon Ben Zaken, my rabbi and my teacher. Rabbi Shmuley Levitin, my rabbi and my teacher. I'm very honored and very delighted to be here tonight to welcome you on behalf of the Chabad Centers of the Pacific Northwest to this very, very special event, acknowledging the date of Gimel Tammuz, which represents the passing of the Rebbe of blessed memory, who was undisputably the greatest Jewish giant of our generation. It is very, very appropriate that we're going to spend this evening as a time of reflection and as a time of unity, which were amongst the very, very important messages that we received from the Rebbe. Just so everybody knows, the actual Gimel Tammuz this year is June 13th. It's just a few days from now, but it's coming up very soon. We are very, very privileged to have some very, very outstanding and special guests tonight. Rabbi Simon Jacobson is a world-famous author who's written about the meaning of life, has written extensively about the meaning of Jewish life. He's exceptionally inspirational. I've seen some of his videos. In his background, he has had a unique function as one of the people privileged to transcribe the talks of the Rebbe for a period of 15 years, which took place on Shabbatot and Jewish holidays, as is clearly forbidden to take notes or use a tape recording machine on those days, and represents just a vast amount of incredible work, which we're very, very privileged to have today. Online, I saw another very interesting thing, that the day after the Rebbe passed in 1994, the famous Larry King invited Rabbi Jacobson to his show to express some remarks, and he said some very interesting things. He said the Rebbe symbolized more than life. He said with the Rebbe one felt eternity, and I thought that was a very profound remark. We're looking forward to hearing from Rabbi Jacobson tonight very much. We'll also be hearing from President Reuven Rivlin. President Reuven Rivlin is the 10th president of the State of Israel, who has dedicated his 7 years in presidency with his mission of unifying the Jewish people in the State of Israel, and unifying the Jewish people in the diaspora all over the Jewish world. And it is exceptionally appropriate that this message of unity coincides with the message the Rebbe has shared with us. And I think it's something that we should all be looking forward to. I don't know if many know that July 9th is actually the last day in office of President Rivlin after 7 years, and he will be retiring. And I believe tonight is going to be either his last or one of his last major addresses to a very large number of the American Jewish community. Probably 1,000 to 2,000 people will get this message. He's also being honored by President Biden and Speaker Nancy Pelosi with personal invitations to Washington for personal private meetings in honor of his achievements as leader of Israel, as leader of the world. We thank President Reuven for what he's done, and we're very much looking forward to hearing from him. Finally, I'd like to thank my friend and my teacher, Rabbi Shmuley Levitin. He's an inspiration, as many know, and has done incredible work on a daily basis as a shaliach of the Rebbe. He works from morning till night, and I'm very honored that he considers me a friend and that I consider him a friend. And on behalf of everyone involved tonight, we thank him very, very much.
We are once again privileged to have a special feature tonight. It is an honor to have with us this evening President of Israel, President Reuven Rivlin, who will share with us some words of warmth and inspiration in honor of tonight's Unity event. Mr. President, we thank you for joining us this evening, and we wish you the utmost bracha v'atzlacha, that you have blessing and success in all of your endeavors. We are honored to introduce to you President of Israel, President Reuven Rivlin.
יקיריי חסידי חב"ד ואוהביו של הרבי, שלום עליכם. הרבי מלובביץ' שאנו מציינים בג' בתמוז את הסתלקותו, ראה עצמו כרבי של כלל ישראל. ובמובנים רבים, בזכות פעולתו העצומה, עם ישראל כולו היו כמו ילדיו, חסידיו. המוטו של הרבי, לא מוותרים על אף יהודי, הוביל את אלפי החסידים להביא את האור היהודי גם לפינות אפלות, גם לרחוקים ביותר. לצד גאונותו בכל מכווני התורה, לצד השימוש המדהים שעשה בעולם המודרני ובמדיה, הרבי היה מנהיג משנה תודעה, הניע אחרים והשפיע, ומשפיע עד היום על חסידיו ועל העולם כולו בעוצמה אדירה. בזכות הרבי התאהב העולם כולו בחב"ד, מהתרמילאים בסעודות השבת בקטמנדו ובכל נקודה שהיא על הגלובוס, ועד חולים ונזקקים. לכולם יש פינה חמה בלב ליהדות, לרבי ולחב"ד. זכיתי ודם חב"די זורם גם בעורקיי, כנין ונכד מצד אמי לחסידי חב"ד מהיישוב היהודי בחברון, וגם אבי מורי שהיה צאצא למתנגדים, היה קשור לרבי ואף התכתב עמו. לפני יותר מ-40 שנה נפגשתי עם הרבה. את התרוממות הרוח שחשתי לא אשכח לעולם. ראיתי לפניי מנהיג אמיתי, איש שכולו שליחות. יהי רצון שזכותו של הרבה תגן עלינו ועל כל ישראל, בימים הקשים העוברים עלינו, אמן ואמן.
Friends, over the next hour, you're going to have a front row seat for tonight's program titled Light Points. We're going to get a glimpse into how the Rebbe nurtured faith, unlocking potential and hope within chaos and confusion, approaching every situation, including challenging circumstances, with a strong and consistently positive attitude and perspective, consistently teaching us that our Torah is a Torah's chayim, a guide for our lives. The Rebbe didn't just see what was, rather what could be, the potential in every individual. Digging beneath the surface, unearthing diamonds and energy, while other people only saw desolate wasteland. Magnifying the tiniest points of life embedded within the human soul. We hope that tonight's program fills you with hope and joy as, God willing, we continue to emerge from COVID with continued good health. Enjoy.
Trach good but sein good. Think good and it will be good. One of the most famous phrases in the Chabad lexicon. It's become a mantra for Jews facing adversity and challenges. Today, modern science has proven the power of positive thinking and its effect on our reality. But what does it mean to think good? Through film of the Rebbe's talks and first-hand accounts of his advice, discover what it really means to your faith in God.
In der Meibischen, mit Zutake, bederach Hateve, was mit Afton, mit Gia Kapecho, mit der Gashmitike Evri. Aber hat nicht keine Teiges, worin der Rebischter 4 Tonnen mit Teff und mit jeder Prat von seinem Leben und seiner Familie.
In 1951, my youngest sister, Amina, she wasn't quite 2 years old. My mother brought boiling water up into the bathroom. She ran downstairs and she came up. Amina was in that boiling water, in that big pail of boiling water. They took her to the Sick Children's Hospital. They said the kidneys may have burned through. The heart may give out from the stress. And the lungs were also compromised. It was Thursday. They said that she's not going to live the day. My father turned to his brother-in-law, Rabbi Chodakov, and asked him to speak to the Rebbe. The Rebbe said, make a Kiddush this Shabbos and things will be all right. Nobody felt like making a Kiddush. It was a very, very strange thing.
Ja, du, die Teile, was wird einmal gebracht in Namen von Baal Shem Tov, und einmal in Namen von dem Magi, und einmal in Namen von dem alten Rebbe, Adam, alle Meilen, wie das Mimoch, du, was mit Pravet, das Simcha Gdela Lemato, Mimoch, ist das Bild, das Simcha Gdela Lemeilen. Und von dort wird das Nimschach, in Unionen הכי גשמי והכי פשוטים ובלושן וסקלו דעלת ברוכס in Bonne Chai und seine Revich.
And they drank and they ate and they danced and they jumped on the tables and they jumped on the chairs. I think one table got broken. The doctors didn't think she would survive Friday. But ultimately, the Rebbe was right. She was able to really recuperate. The doctors couldn't believe what happened. Everybody was amazed.
יום אחד אני מקבל מכתב מהבית, שאבא קיבל התקפת לב והוא במצב אנוש. אני מקבל מכתב כזה, מה אני צריך לחשוב? ומה, כן, אז אני הכנסתי מכתב לרבי, כבר אינני יודע מה לחשוב. אז הרבי לקח את המכתב הזה, עשה קו מתחת למילים האלה, והוא כותב, ולפלא, 3 סימני קריאה ככה, אתה רואה את העוצמה שבזה ככה, ולפלא, שהרי ידוע בכגון דע, ציווי נישואינו רבותינו, טראח גוט וזיין גוט, ואחכה לבשורות טובות. קיבלתי את המכתב הזה, ידעתי שם שאני חי, טוב, המשכתי להגיד תהילים וכן הלאה, אז יום חמישי בלילה.
Schaß der Betochen ist wie sie darf zu sein, wie sie nach Nefen al-Haschlich al-Hashem Yehovcho, ebe huye chalkelechot, stell der Rebischter Echid zu, de Kelim, in welches soll sein und chal sein und herabkommen die Broche, begolui betev hanire והניגלה.
עוברת השבת, ביום ראשון עזרתי אומץ וטלפנתי הביתה. אמא שלי מרימה את הטלפון, שאלתי אותה מה שלום, אבא יצא מכלל סכנה. עברתי את הכביש והלכתי במינכה שם, ואמרתי שהרבי יוצא ממינכה, נו, יראתם שטויבס פמיר? אמרתי לו, כן, יצא מכלל סכנה. מתי? אמרתי לו, ביום חמישי בערב. אז הוא שואל אותי, מתי אתה התחלת לחשוב טוב?
Also doch ידוע viel von der alte Rebbe in Sefer Tani Kadisha ist Megami, die Linie von Hepech Asimcho, a viele, wenn sie weiß, der Cheis hat, hat Zibis auf deren Bedachschmiers. Und noch mehr, a viele, wenn weiß, der Cheis hat Zibis auf deren Beruchnis. Und noch mehr, a viele, wenn die Zibis einen Tag eben Zius auf Pieter Semet.
לא היו לנו ילדים כמה שנים, דבר שמאוד מאוד כאב לי. וזה היה עם דיאגנוזה של רופא שטען שאני לעולם לא אוכל, מבחינה ביולוגית, אני לא אוכל ללדת ילדים. אמרתי לבעלי שאני רוצה לנסוע לרבה. אמרתי לרבה שאני רוצה ילדים. בכיתי הרבה. הרבה הסתכל עליי ואומר לי, הייתכן שבחורה שלמדה בבית יעקב תולה תקווה אך ורק ברפואה הקונבנציונלית, ועושה לי כך, ואפסה תקווה מן השמיים, ומן הראוי שישבו וילמדו את ספר חובת הלבבות, שער הביטחון, ולא יצטרכו יותר לבכות. והקדוש ברוך הוא יברך אותם בבנים ובנות חסידיים, יראי שמיים, ויזכו לגדלם לתורה, לחופה ולמעשים טובים.
Doch der alte Rebbe bepasst und bei Achlotius, als mit Tolkien von Nazareth. Gleich Tomer fällt es einmal etwas rein. Hashem mit Männer Afibu, darf man gleich suchen, letztens, was das mehr Happer sei. Zu Alinien Teif, bis zu Simcha Mitis. Beruchni ist, wenn ich falsch wurde, kommt das Ares in Simcha Mitis begashmi.
God Almighty bless you to God for strength and atmosphere. And today seems to have more talk. God Almighty, and you have more bracha for God Almighty. More talk and so on. And they should be funny, not my relations.
The most important thing, and I think that's what the Rebbe gave mostly over, is the koyach of positive thinking.
Ik wil de landen, het pasje, de telen, die uit de Bibel niet het hebben tochen, dat het zeker van wel is, dat ze hebben een special shot, special for the Baptist, a special chapter about middle van de tochen.
עכשיו, אנחנו ישבנו ולמדנו, והייתה תקופה שגם נתתי הרצאות לקבוצות על ביטחון בהשם. וכמובן שזה חיזק אותי מאוד, והבכי כבר נגמר, לא הייתי צריכה לבכות, וגם הקדוש ברוך הוא עזר מיד.
ביטחון על פי הלוכה is als het beteer בהוויה, עד הרבשטר wird ממלא sein כל צרוך. Eibchas v'sholem danach fällt etwas, darf danach sagen, ganz so Teva, al Pizzi, mit Teva sein, mit Teva Semes. Aber das ist nicht eine Wede von Bitochen. Eine Wede von Bitochen kommen, al Pi Haloche ist, als hat Beteer, Bepashtus, at der Rebischte wird in dem Malle sein, Kohl, Zroch. God will not bless you that you will not need to Bitochen, because you have it in church.
אז הרב אומר לי, נו, soll sich noch einmal nicht treffen, solche Sachen, sollt wissen, alle Menschen trachten gut.
For a Jew, the true path to success lies in living life according to Torah's directives. Central among these is the observance of the day of rest. Meet 3 Jews whose lives were transformed through the observance of Shabbos and an encounter with the Rebbe.
der Eibischter hat beschaffen die Welt in 6 Tagen. Und bei jedem Aschwi ist beim Gewinn Shabbos Lashem, Elokecho, demot hat geruht, ist Bishas Ayid, und es kommt der Shabbosdiker Tag, und hielt ihm ab und heiligt ihm. Wie der Eibischter will, vereinzigt sich mit den Eibischten, und sie beide seien die Gewaltiger auf der Welt.
En we maken de plan de slicen, ja? Maak een stukje. $1.
Growing up in Crown Heights in the late 50s, early 60s was different than it is today. My father had a pharmacy in Crown Heights for almost 42 years. He would have discussions with the Rebbe, mainly about the store. At the time, my father kept the store open on Shabbos. My father's answer was, people depend on me to make their medicines. I'm saving life here. The Rebbe said, no, you can close on Shabbat. The fact is that there were pharmacies were open back then 7 days a week. My father said, okay, but Parnassa, I mean, I have to make, Shabbos is when, Saturday was the day we made our money for the week.
Wenn es kommt zu einem Konflikt zwischen das, was der Umgebung verlangt von und das, was steht in der Teire, wie rausgebracht in Shulchan Aruch, ist a Vodai Atem, ist der Knecht von dem Eibischten, und als fühlt sich, wie der Eibischter hat ihm angewiesen, ist ist sicher, als haben einen ruhigen Schabbos. Von Shabbos wird haben noch eine gebenchte Woche.
Not only are you guaranteed your parnassa, but you have the way you have to look at the parnassa. You can make less parnassa and spend it on good things than make more parnassa and, God forbid, have to spend it on bad things, like for health and so on and so forth. And you of all people should know this. And that convinced my father to close his store on Shabbos.
I started a store, clothing store in downtown Los Angeles, 3,000 square feet store. I really seriously was saying myself, like, I want to close the store on Shabbos. I don't want to work on Shabbos. But it was difficult to think like this because most of the business you're doing on Shabbos. There was some Shabbos I used to sell $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 on Shabbos. During the week, barely I can sell $100, $150. The contract, the lease I have, I was obligated, 20 years lease. The owner, he warning me in the beginning, if you ever was thinking to leave this lease, I'm gonna run after you to the rest of your life. I'm not gonna let you go out from it. So I wrote to the Rebbe, told them, Rebbe, I decide to close my store on Shabbos. I would like to have a blessing, I should not get hurt.
Wie bald weiß, Birkas Hashem hi Tasche, und sie hängt auf in dem Eibischten, ist doch verstandig. Als kommt Freitag vernacht, ist soll nicht halten in einer mythischen Mische. Ist bei einer sichere Sache, nie das ist sein Verdienst und nie das ist sein Derech, worin sein Parnasse kommt von Birkas Hashem.
I'm getting a letter. And in the envelope I open, I see $18, and then it say, 1. מתחיל מקודם שקיעת החמה וגדול הזכות. 2. להפיץ את התורה מתוך שמחה. 3. לתת צדקה שמה, to give צדקה at the money what he gave me. The next day I say, I'm going to go to the landlord, and I'm going to give him the lease, and the landlord was not there. I came back to my store. There is a guy walking to my store. He wants to buy the store, he's telling me. So I told him, go to the landlord. He's telling me, I was with the landlord. I said, what the landlord told you? He said, you're holding the lease, אתה מחזיק את החוזה. He took a checkbook and he wrote me a nice check. Just can tell you, with this check I bought a house and I started manufacturing. And I remember going to the Rebbe, and on Sunday I told the Rebbe, I got a miracle with the store. the Rebbe was laughing and he went like this on my mouth, like, don't talk about this.
הרב, אנחנו השקענו שלושתנו בביזנס שעומד להיות סגור בשבת. אנחנו צריכים ברכה והצלחה.
בשביל השבת ויום טוב.
ויום טוב.
ושבת
ויום טוב סגור.
Теперь очень нужно соблюдать субботу. Так как это Богу указал, что Асерес Хадибис, когда он дал Торы, он начал с того, что каждый еврей до конца времен должен соблюдать субботу. If you'll be in the Congress and all the people will know that you're the Shem Shabbos, that it will help the Bnei Noach, the Gentile people, to observe their mitzvahs also. Not only for the Jews to become Shem Shabbos.
I started my practice on Nulatz Avenue, and things looked very bleak. It wasn't going anywhere. I remember having a friend. I happened to have mentioned to him that I was having some problems. This young man suggested that the Rebbe would be able to help me, and I made an appointment with the Rebbe. I started to tell him I wasn't doing well here in Brooklyn, and I was able to find a place in Bayside. I was going to be starting an office there. He says, do you work on Shabbos? And I said, yes, I do. And he says, now you're going to a new place. He says, you're moving. Perhaps you ought to think about not working on Shabbos.
Was orthodoxy, was fordert bei jeder Rieden, als soll wissen sein, als ist der Bnei Shel Melech Malcham Lochim HaKodesh Baruch Hu. Und auch das, was die Völker müssen ankommen, zu halten, offen die Kleid, weil man nicht in den Fällen in Parnasse, bei Jiden ist Punktverkehr. Ein Jid ist nicht unterworfen, Chuki HaTeva, nur sein Cheiki, sein Constitution ist auch das, was ist angeschrieben in Tere.
It became known that Dr. Walensky doesn't work on Saturday. It was unheard of. Dr. Walensky goes to a shul. I was very successful financially, very successful. Even in the way I lived my life, I felt more satisfied, more at ease, very satisfied with being Jewish.
Bisher der Shabbos wird angeführt, wie sie darf zu sein, oder demut, wie sagt in Seher, werden von dem Shabbos gebencht, die ganze 6 Tage von der Woche, was kommt nach dem.
The most important impetus in the life that I'm describing to you now has been my meeting with the Rebbe.
Inclusion starts with our attitudes towards what it means to belong. The Rebbe taught us to embrace and value each and every person based solely on an individual's inner essence. In this next clip, we get a glimpse into the Rebbe's transformational approach in seeing the possibility within every individual. Take a look.
The rabbi referred to me children for their problems of development, some of them Down syndrome children. And I must say, they believe that people with genetic disorders, chromosomal disorders, can be turned into high functioning and very close to study, to Yiddishkeit, etc. I heard it very much from the rabbi. It was a daring thing, because at this time, people didn't believe it's possible.
When my daughter Zlata Esther was born in 1961, autism was totally unknown at the time. When she was born, I was overjoyed. She was a beautiful, beautiful full-term baby. However, by the time she was 18 months old, she was sitting and crawling, and she looked like a very happy, content baby. She wasn't walking yet, and I was a little bit concerned. So I went in for a neurological test. and the neurological test was inconclusive, but they categorized her and defined her as autistic. I was bewildered because I had no idea what autism was all about. My pediatrician knew nothing about it.
Children or individuals who have mental or a combination of physical and mental impairment weren't being institutionalized. They were just being warehoused, with custodial care. I corresponded with Rabbi Schneerson. I said, how may we view this issue from a Jewish perspective?
So I remember coming to his office, and the Rebbe motioned for me to sit her down on a chair. The Rebbe let me voice my concerns, what was going on. And then he took out of his desk a sheet of paper and a pencil and pushed it across the desk towards Lottie. And she automatically, without giving it any second thought, picked up the pencil and started scribbling on the paper. And the Rebbe had this big, broad smile on his face. He was absolutely delighted. And he said, "Ich weiß nicht, was mir macht, das ganze Meise da." Gave me some suggestions what to do. One of them was to place her in a regular kindergarten or nursery school in the neighborhood. And then he told me to go see Dr. Schick. I think the Rebbe felt I could do a lot with this child. And that gave me the courage to teach her a lot of things and make her quite independent.
What he was saying very clearly again and again and again is that we, even for the most severely impaired, that you have to have expectations for improvement.
This is a group of special children that I teach. We all meet on Sundays and we learn Yiddish kind of brachas. Can you give them a bracha? Can you just say a special?
For all the group, and everyone will send this to charity on his own, for this money. It doesn't matter, bless you, to lead them in the right direction.
It is important that the trainees themselves should be encouraged, both by word and the manner of their training, to feel confident that they are not, God forbid, cases. Care should be taken not to exaggerate expectations through far-fetched promises. However, a way can surely be found to avoid raising false hopes, yet giving guarded encouragement.
Well-meaning people told my wife to take Yossi out of the house because blind, deaf, hyperactive, trying to raise a family of young children was pretty much impossible. You couldn't put a glass on the table, you couldn't put a vase on the table, everything was plastic. You had to protect Yossi against himself, other children from Yossi in terms of his rambunctiousness, and he was full of energy. At night she would cry and say, Ribbono Shel Olam, God, I'll never take Yossi out of the house, but if you ever decide to help my Yossi, I will dedicate my life to helping other mothers who are struggling with their children with disabilities. We came to New York looking for medical help. My uncle, Dr. Herschel Samuels, talks to me about having an interesting new patient, Mrs. Schneerson, very bright woman. I said, Uncle Herschel, are you talking about Mrs. Schneerson as in the Lubavitcher Rebbe's wife? He said, yes. I said, you know, Uncle Herschel, if you could get me a blessing from the Rebbe, it would mean the world to me. While we were standing with the Rebbe, Yossi was running around, you couldn't control him, and the Rebbe kept giving him nickels, and Yossi would run 2 steps, 3 steps, and throw away the nickel. And the Rebbe would give him another one, and he'd do the same thing, and we were dying, we were so embarrassed. And the Rebbe said, Lost him. This is a gesunde tchuna, leave the child. This is a healthy quality. I really can't go into the Rebbe's mind, and we didn't ask what his intent was. But in seeing what developed, his tenacity, that just like he took the nickel from the Rebbe, you know what? Boom, another one and another one, and that's it. Yossi has never stopped, and hopefully he'll never stop.
Was leider ist nicht gesund. Wenn man sagt das in Englisch, das ist autistic.
Es ist
zurückgeblieben.
Wie alt ist er?
Er ist schon 22, er wird bald 23 Jahre. Er ist in England in einer speziellen Institutie, in London. Eine jüdische Institutie. Wir haben keinmal nicht gebracht kein Amerika. Aber davon, man muss sie einfach die Schmeier.
Just him validating that she had possibilities. That gave me tremendous hope. And if you have the hope when you have a special child, you can do ever so much more.
Every possible emphasis should be placed on the tangible and audio-visual aspects of Jewish education in terms of the actual practice of mitzvahs. It would give him a sense of belonging and attachment. Even a subconscious feeling of inner security would pass into the conscious state, especially if the teacher will endeavor to cultivate and fortify this feeling.
Wir sagen, dass die Autistik dann nicht geschaffen, sondern mit Kindern gescheitert nicht, sondern mit Menschen gescheitert nicht. Aber mit Lebischen ist die gescheitert funktioniert bei anderen und noch mehr. Man sagt nicht vernommen mit Menschen, sondern sie vernommen mit Lebischen.
Interessant ist, ich habe einmal probiert mit ihm lernen, sozusagen eine Woche. Und das ist schon gesagt.
Hat er ja gesagt?
Ja, gesagt. Und er bekannt ist bei ihm, als er halt das auch bekannt ist.
Er hat das so gekuscht, was ich im Sinne.
Nein.
Sie konnte sich heranstellen. Das ist eine Sache, was er mit Tschüss und das war ein halbes Verwenden, dann noch schaut mit kommen dann besuchen. Das ist der Mann, die was besuchen, dann man gab den Tschüss.
Nothing ever stopped Yossi. Not then, not later. At the age of 20, he lost his ability to walk. Today, he's 43. He wanted to ride elephants in Thailand. He rode elephants in Thailand. He wanted to be, he has an amazing sense of smell. He wanted to learn to be a sommelier, a wine professional. His wines, called Yossi, went on sale in Israel. Yossi has never given up, and I believe, in retrospect, that was the quality that Ebba was talking about.
In Daikin Meche, Mahashem Shenesim Lemishahu, Shehu Nechi, Shezehu Mara al Mashahu Nechisus V'yerido, Ki im Adra Betzorich Lahadgish Bozer, Shehu Mashahu Miyuchot, Umitsuyon, Al-Yedei Beire Hodom, שנוסם לכיחס מיוחדים יסיירים על מה שיש לו להודום מן השורו.
Our understanding of the other is very much affected and related to our understanding of ourselves. In the way the rabbi understood the condition of the individual, and the way he claimed and suggested and felt empowered to say, yes, do it. There is a very different way of seeing the human being. Not as a just reflection of yourself, but as something which comes be'era dilela.
Hi, I'm Rabbi Mendel Lifshitz from Boise, Idaho, and it's an honor for Chabad Lubavitch of Idaho to join in tonight's special event. I'd like to take a brief moment to introduce our next speaker, Rabbi Simon Jacobson. Rabbi Jacobson is the author of the best-selling book, Toward a Meaningful Life, which has been translated into many languages. Rabbi Jacobson heads the Meaningful Life Center, which bridges the secular and the spiritual through a wide variety of programming. For over 14 years, Rabbi Jacobson was responsible for publishing the Rebbe's talks. This consisted of memorizing and transcribing entire talks that the Rebbe gave. He was privileged to publish more than 1,000 of the Rebbe's talks. He also serves as the chairman and publisher of the Allgemeiner Journal. Rabbi Jacobson, who has been interviewed extensively on TV and radio, has lectured to diverse audiences on 6 continents about spirituality and applying Jewish thought to contemporary life. Rabbi Jacobson's teachings have captured innumerable hearts over the last 40 years. Tonight, it's our good fortune to hear him. Rabbi Simon Jacobson.
Good evening. My dear friends, it is a great honor to be celebrating together the teachings and impact of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. In a few days will be the 27th yahrzeit of the Rebbe, 1994, and tonight is actually the 80th anniversary of the Rebbe and his wife arriving to the shores of America from the throes of the abyss of Nazi Europe. So how fitting to celebrate together one people, one heart. My friends, Washington State, in Oregon, in Alaska, Idaho, British Columbia. We are different in so many ways, but at the same time, we share a common destiny, a common vision, and a common goal. And it was the Rebbe, as a true visionary, who dedicated his entire life in teaching us how we can be diverse and yet find harmony. The Rebbe was once asked by someone, he said, Rebbe, we're already after World War II. We've gone through such terrible times, but now it's an age of prosperity, an age of peace. Technology is connecting us all over the world, and all the other advances that we're experiencing, medical breakthroughs, standard of living, longevity, life expectancy. What is our mission today? And the Rebbe responded that as we connect more and more, and there are so many different types of people, each with different opinions, each with different perspectives, our mission is to create a unity among this diversity. Harmony within diversity, where we appreciate the individuality of every person and their unique contribution, different than another's, but yet we all complement each other in one harmonious symphony. In other words, one people, one heart. The body is made up of many parts, but there's one heart that beats within us, and it pumps the blood that circulates throughout the entire body, from head to toe, every organ, every limb, every cell. So here we are, celebrating this unity and honoring and celebrating the Rebbe and his great contributions. You know, my dear friends, the sign of something that is true is when it lasts, when it endures. We are 27 years from when the Rebbe left this physical world. And yet, the Rebbe's impact, his teachings, are more powerful today than ever before. That's a tribute to something that is true. Because it's not just about an individual, it's about the message. It's about the approach. So what I'd like to do this evening is to dig into this, to come away with understanding the formula, the methodology, the algorithm, if you wish, that the Rebbe presented to us and empowered us with. Now, the Rebbe's teachings are vast, and it's very difficult to sum it up in just a few points. And yet, there are some key points, fundamental principles that stand out, which capture and reflect the revolution that the Rebbe created. I had the unique privilege for many years to sit at the Rebbe's feet and to absorb, to retain, to listen to the Rebbe's words delivered on Shabbat and the holidays when no recordings were made and no notes were taken. So we had to remember verbatim hours and hours of these talks. I've been deeply immersed in these teachings almost all of my life. Some of you may know me as the author of Torah Meaning for Life, distilling these teachings into a language relevant, accessible to every human being on earth. So what I'd like to share are 5 cornerstones, you can say methodologies, the formula that empowers and has the capacity to transform our lives individually and collectively. 5 principles that capture the Rebbe's unique approach to the challenges of our time. We're not living in easy times. The upheavals, the uncertainties, the disruptions, beginning with COVID, and just recently, the unrest and the hostilities, both in this country and of course what is so close to our hearts, in Israel. And there's so many unknowns. So now more than ever, these teachings stand out as beacons of light that can give us direction, guidance, inspiration, courage, and strength to forge ahead and truly build a better future for ourselves and for our families and for our communities and for the entire globe. So let's go through these 5 principles. It's always nice to find some acronym. I couldn't find one really that was fitting to the content, but it came down to being MIPOD. If you wish, you can call it MyPod. M for mission, I for initiative, P for persistence, O for opportunities, and D for destination. And I repeat again, by no way can anyone capture the Rebbe's scope, the panorama, the horizons in 5 or 10 or 20 principles. And yet, we can discover and appreciate some of this power and potency through these 5. So let's begin. Mission. One of the most fundamental principles the Rebbe taught. Literally in every talk he delivered, in every audience that he met with others, in the notes he wrote, in his letters, is that each individual on earth was sent here on a mission. And that's the driving force of your life. Now in business, everybody knows, no business can function without a mission statement. But most of us don't think about it on a personal level. Can you function without your personal mission statement? We can manage, you see that happening all the time. But is our life being lived to the fullest? Are we living up to the calling for which we were sent to this world? And the Rebbe identified and said, mission. Perhaps due to the success and prosperity of our generation, which often leads to apathy, mission was more important than ever to create that focus, that sense of urgency, that sense of laser focus toward why you are here. The Hebrew word that some of you may be familiar with is shlichut, shliach. Every emissary and ambassador of the Rebbe's is called a shliach. That means a mission, a person sent on a mission. But the truth is, it's far broader than that. God sent every human being on a mission. No one would be here on this earth, explains the Rebbe, if they were not chosen. Your soul was chosen to come to this time and this place where you are to fulfill something that you and only you can do. I remember how often the Rebbe would emphasize this. I remember even once him looking around at a Farbrengen, many people, as saying, every one of you has something to contribute that no one else that ever lived or ever will live can contribute but you. Even the great Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebecca, the great men and women throughout history cannot accomplish what you need to accomplish. We don't have the time to elaborate on the implications of that awesome statement, but just a few of them. Number one is that your life is not negligible. Doesn't matter how many people on this earth, 7 billion, 8 billion, we're not just another grain of sand on a beach. You are absolutely necessary and indispensable. Imagine if we felt that 24/7. The concept of monotony and boredom wouldn't exist. The concept of insecurity wouldn't exist. Of the fears and all the other phobias that we deal with and neurosis. Because you have a mission. And indeed, every morning, we acknowledge it by saying, Moda ani lefanecha, thank you for returning my soul to me. Yes, my indispensable soul, for renewing my contract, for giving me purpose. So whatever we do in our lives, our work, our home, entertainment, social, should all be infused with that mission. And what is the mission? The mission is to bring light and illuminate and spiritualize the material corner of the world that you occupy. And everything begins with that. When you have that mission, it informs the rest of the details. So we're all shluchim. We are all messengers. We're all ambassadors sent by God to this world to fulfill something that you uniquely can fulfill. Now that takes effort to figure out what that is. It has to fit your personality, your opportunities, the uniqueness of your own life situation, where you are, what social status you occupy, because all that is part of the signs that God gives us, the signposts, to identify what your purpose is. Principle number 2, the I, initiative. To take the initiative. If someone were to ask you, would you prefer $1 million given to you as a gift or $100,000 that you earn on your own? Let's higher the stakes. $100 million given as a gift or $10 million that you earn on your own? All of us would say, of course, the 100 million. And yet the Talmud makes an interesting statement, that a person desires more, one measure that they earn on their own than 9 measures that they're given as a gift. Because of course you can buy more with more money, but you treasure and you hold precious and you value that which you make an effort to do because it's yours, you own it. So though God should bless us all with hundreds of millions and even more, the Rebbe from day one when he assumed leadership, formally assumed leadership, which is 70 years ago. It's interesting. This is a year of many anniversaries. 80 years when the Rebbe came to America with his wife, the Rebbe Chaim Mushka. 70 years from when he said his first formal Hasidic discourse, Bossi Legani. And what did the Rebbe say? After the discourse, the Rebbe said, don't delude yourself into thinking that now you've appointed me to be your Rebbe. I'm paraphrasing. That you're absolved. No. Everyone has their job to do. I don't decline from helping, but you have to take the initiative. And this became a undercurrent. In everything that the Rebbe inspired, it was always, you need to own it. When you look around and people ask the question, it's 27 years since the Rebbe is not here physically, 29 years since the Rebbe had that terrible stroke. How is it possible that Chabad is not just continuing, it's thriving? Can a company survive without a CEO? And the answer is the Rebbe is not a CEO. What the Rebbe did was he empowered, he infused each person that came in his proximity to take initiative, So every shliach, every emissary, wherever he may be, owns his position. He's not just there as a hired gun. And therefore he invests his life, his 24/7, his life and soul of himself and his wife and his family to build. Because the Rebbe understood the power of getting people to take initiative, to be a flame that rises on its own. In educational and psychological terms, it means not just teaching people information, facts, and data, but empowering them with methodology. Not just giving them an answer to a question, but teaching them how to answer a question. Not just teaching people what to think, but how to think. That's a whole different level of education and communication when you empower someone. But what's vital there is initiative. Taking initiative. I remember in the year 1991 it was the Parsha Ba'alescha, chapter, the third and the fourth book of the Torah, the book of Numbers. And it talks about the high priest kindling the flames of the menorah, of the candelabra. And the word the Torah uses is to raise the flames, not to kindle the flames. And the commentary Rashi, based on the Medrash, asks the question, you kindle flames, you don't raise flames. You ignite them, you light them. Why does it say that to raise the flames? And Rashi answers, because when the high priest lit the menorah, it was incumbent upon him not just to light it, but to make sure that it catches. It takes sometimes a split second until the flame catches, to wait till the flame is rising on its own. And the Rebbe, 1991, among other times, it was one of the favorite themes of the Rebbe, said, and what happens if it burns out? He goes back and lights it. No, because it's not just about lighting a menorah, it's about the empowerment. The menorah, the candles, the light, the flame represents the flame of every soul. It's how you're supposed to communicate, how you're supposed to teach and educate and inspire. Not just to light a flame, to make sure the flames rise on their own, that the individual, even when the teacher is no longer there, is burning brightly and illuminating initiative. So in that 1991 talk, since we had the opportunity to communicate with the Rebbe all the time about the questions and nuances and explaining, so I asked a bunch of questions regarding that issue, because at the end of the day, it's the high priest that lights the menorah. So is it really your initiative? And the Rebbe went back and forth and asked a bunch of questions. And the only time the Rebbe answered the following answer was then. And perhaps because this would have been the last Parsha Ba'aloscha that the Rebbe spoke to us, Le'esata, until now. And what is that? The Rebbe answered. The entire theme of the Farbrengen, the entire theme of my talk was that you need to initiate, that you need to be a flame that rises on its own, and you're asking me to answer your questions. I wasn't happy with that answer. I wanted the Rebbe's answer. I didn't want my answer. But I believe, in retrospect, when I think about it, that the Rebbe gave the answer through saying that. I'm giving you the strength to find an answer. But you need to make the effort. Take initiative. Principle number 3, persistence. When you do something good, be persistent. Not once, not twice. Make sure you never stop. Share a personal story when I was a child. I remember it was Sukkot, the holiday of Sukkot, where we sit in these portable shacks. And the roof is not a serious roof. It's evergreen. It's some vegetation. That's part of what a sukkah is about. And the year was 1966. And that sukkah in New York was, what can I tell you? It was a flood. It was raining nonstop. It didn't stop raining. Chabad, we sit in the sukkah when it rains. Obviously, we don't just sit there. When we eat a meal, we don't not eat because it rains. But the schach, which is those that the greens, the vegetation that we put on top, usually pine branches, on top of the sukkah, covers the sukkah very thickly. So in the beginning of a rain, it's great. But as it continues to rain and the roof gets saturated, it starts coming down in globs. Very unbearable. Glob down this here and down here. I was a child. I was 9 years old. The Rebbe had an annual Farbrengen on Sukkot. In the Sukkah, near 770 Eastern Parkway, the central headquarters, there was a setup, there was a larger Sukkah, not very large, but a Sukkah. The Rebbe would sit and speak. And they would sing songs and l'chaim. Regular Farbrengen was in the Sukkah. Pouring rain, the Rebbe doesn't stop what he's doing. I remember as a child, coming to the Sukkah, middle of the talk, I see the Rebbe there, I couldn't hear, especially the rain was coming down. The Chassidim were all standing there listening. Later I was told that the Rebbe, in the middle of the Farbrengen, stood up and took off his coat, which was so soaking. So people thought maybe this is ending. No, it just began. And the Rebbe said a Hasidic discourse, which had a certain twist of irony, called V'shaftem mayim b'sosen, when you will draw water with joy. Anyway, this little child, myself, walks in. I'm standing in the back, and I saw the sight. Chassidim standing, the Rebbe speaking, completely focused, oblivious to the rain. It wasn't even what he said. That image never left me, because I think about it very often. You know, in America we have a thing called a rain date. It rains, you postpone. Rain delay or postponement. The Rebbe did not have to Farbrengen that day. He could have Farbrengen another day. Or he could have been inside the synagogue, inside the shul, and without saying l'chaim or eating anything. No, but this is what he did. The custom was to Farbrengen, the Rebbe is not stopping. A persistence. I remember as a teenager standing once at an ocean. My parents in the summer rented a home. It was near the ocean, near the Atlantic Ocean. You know, a teenager, I went out for a walk in the middle of the night, standing near the sea, and seeing those waves crashing. And I was waiting. Maybe the waves will go to sleep at some point. Maybe they'll stop. No. And it reminded me of the Rebbe in the Sukkah. That type of unceasing, unwavering, unyielding commitment. The waves, they never stop. There's a certain eternity to it. And this wasn't just a nice romantic theory. It actually affected my life. When I began to teach, I remember giving a class every Wednesday night. And there's many times you have to, if you don't feel well, you're under the weather is bad, there's a blizzard, or other excuses. But I never forgot the message. You're doing something good, there's no such thing as stopping. The persistence. In the story of Rabbi Akiva, where he saw a drop by drop of water. Even though it's a drop of water, it can pierce through a stone. That's the power of persistence. The Rebbe personified, embodied persistence. The unwavering, the unyielding. I remember Farbrengen after Farbrengen, and the Rebbe insisting and repeating, and the patience with people that were not always completely on that level. But the Rebbe's consistent persistence, awesome. And it changed worlds, and it changed people. And it changed me, and it has the power to change every one of us. You start something good, make sure you continue. Find a way to continue. Never stop something good. And even if there's obstacles and there are reasons and impediments and excuses, I'm still giving this class. Wednesday night class I began in 1981. 81, 82. So we're talking now over 40 years. Well, close to 40 years. Principle number 4. Opportunities. By the Rebbe, everything is an opportunity. Whether it's a positive thing, whether it seems negative, it's an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity to accomplish something. It's an opportunity to change the very reality of a situation. Let's demonstrate it with a story as well. It's a story I have with my own father. The year is 1989. September 1989. It's Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. The Hebrew year 5750, Tafshinun, 89. My father had a mini stroke right before Rosh Hashanah. He ended up in the hospital. He had to stay in the hospital Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Not very pleasant. But that's where he was, in NYU, Manhattan. I receive a phone call from the Rebbe's secretary the day before Yom Kippur. It says the Rebbe wants to give you lekach, which is sweet honey cake, accustomed to do so in the beginning of the year, for the blessing for a sweet and healthy year. So I come running to the Rebbe's office. Outside the Rebbe's office, there's the hall, right outside the Rebbe's door. When I arrive, the Rebbe opens the door and gives me 2 pieces of honey cake and says in Yiddish, and I'll translate, this is for your father. Tell him he should have I'm giving you a sweet cake, and that he should have a sweet and healthy year. And then the Rebbe smiles, a broad smile, and says to me, tell your father that when he finishes the mission for which he was sent to the hospital, he will be released. The Rebbe's words. Well, I made my way very quickly to NYU. I brought my father the cake. I told him exactly what the Rebbe said. Can you imagine? My father was in the hospital not because he wanted to be in the hospital. He had a stroke. He had no choice. The Rebbe sees a completely different story. You're there for a mission. There was no other way to get you there. It's an opportunity. My father, in his own way, he spoke to doctors. My father was a journalist. He had ability to communicate well. And he did his thing. But just to show you that this wasn't just a nice, cute statement, the day after Yom Kippur, the Rebbe's assistant, the Rebbe's chief of staff, his main secretary, is Rabbi Chadakov, who was not so well, he was already an older man at the time, comes to the hospital to visit my father, and he asks my father, he says, the Rebbe wants to know, did you finish your mission? Well, apparently he did, because a few days later he was released. Can you imagine this? How to look at life this way? Everything is an opportunity. Everything is a spiritual opportunity. Business people who own businesses, whoever they meet, wherever they go, they're always looking to find an opportunity. The Rebbe was the quintessential spiritual opportunist in a positive way. Wherever he went, wherever he sent people, wherever he saw, it was about redeeming and freeing divine sparks. Because that's what the reason you came there. You may think you're coming there for business purposes, you travel to a certain place for business purposes, for entertainment, for whatever it may be, to meet someone. The truth is it's an opportunity that God is giving you. God leads the footsteps of a human being, and every encounter and interaction, whether you know it or not, especially the ones that are spontaneous and not planned, is an opportunity, a divine spiritual opportunity to change the situation for the better, to bring light, to bring a kind word. My father said some things to the doctors, communicated with them, inspired them, educated, but not like in a very pleasant, beautiful way. Opportunity. Everything is an opportunity. Consistent. Anytime someone wrote to the Rebbe, I have a challenge, a difficulty, I don't know, I can do it, everything was no. It's an opportunity for you to overcome the challenge. It's only there for you to bring out and draw out from you even greater strengths. And finally, my friends, appropriately, the D for destination. So just like everything, the point of departure begins with a mission, there's also the realization of the mission, the destination, the ultimate goal, the objective. The Rebbe had his sights on the destination. From when he was a little child, he writes in the letter, I always envisioned what the world would look like when there'll be world peace and the eradication of evil and injustice and war and pain and suffering. And indeed, in the Rebbe's first formal discourse delivered 70 years ago, the Rebbe states it and makes it clear. This is his first formal statement. The mission of our generation is to reach the destination. And what is that destination? In Hebrew, in the Torah language, it's called Mashiach and Geula. But in simple English, it's the fulfillment and the realization of the purpose and design for which God created its very existence itself. Think of like an engineer, builds a machine, creates a whole strategy. But there's a goal. The mission is to fulfill the goal. The goal is the destination when that machine or that project or that initiative or that venture lives up to and fulfills the purpose for which it was built. Life is that machine. The Torah is God's operator's manual, life operator's manual. Tells us what to do to make our lives work best, what not to do to avoid harm. When will we be at our healthiest, individually and collectively? When will matter and spirit be aligned? Form and function, soul and body in one harmony? That is the destination. Everything we do today, everything we've done for thousands of years, are the building blocks that have accumulated to create that total fusion of spirit and matter, of the divine and existence, where heaven and earth meet. In simple terms, I often ask somebody, I said, who are you? And they respond by giving me their business card. I said, that's not who you are, that's what you do. Some people maybe don't understand what I was saying, but some respond to me with a sigh and say, "Oi, what should I tell you? I've been doing it for so long, what I do has become who I am." How sad. Your identity, who you are, should define what you do, not what you do defines who you are. The captain tells the ship where to go, the ship doesn't tell the captain where to go. Judaism overall, the Torah, is God's mandate to us to teach us how to navigate and where to go. The destination is when all that will come to fruition in living up to our potential and to the world's potential, living up to the purpose for which we were all created, and that is what? As the Rebbe said in that first discourse 70 years ago, to turn the world into a home for God, a place where the divinity, spirituality is comfortable, a world where materialism is not an end in itself, but it's a means toward the pursuit of knowing God, of experiencing godliness, experiencing spirituality, a world filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. In the words of Isaiah the prophet, cited by Maimonides at the end of his classic magnum opus, Mishnah Torah. That was the focus, the mission, that we are the seventh generation from the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad Hasidus, and we will finish the job. Everything the Rebbe did was with his sights on that destination. As the years rolled on, especially in the mid-80s and late 80s and early 90s, this became prominent. The Rebbe said, we are now there, we're at the finish line. And all we need is to do one more thing to tip the scales. All we need to do is become aware that we are at the end of a marathon, with every generation carrying the baton for that leg of the marathon. But we're the last leg that will cross the finish line with the accumulative power, like a midget that stands on the shoulders of giants, of all the generations before us. Imagine how compelling that is. That is what we heard. Those that sat by the Rebbe, that listened to the Rebbe, that stood before him. This is what we heard day after day, week after week. So you can imagine when you come away with these 5 principles, MIPOD, mission, initiative, persistence, opportunities, and destination, how it completely recalibrates how you think, how you speak, and how you act. So as we honor the Rebbe, and we honor the Rebbe's teachings and their impact, and we see how they live on within us, we are the arms and legs, and with everyone we influence. Because that was the point, that we are not here just to take, but to give, to share. We are all shluchim, we are all ambassadors to carry this message. I have no doubt, and I've said this many times when I was interviewed, different media outlets, Torah Meaningful Life, I have no doubt that when the world comes to appreciate it, the world that does not know of it yet, these Rebbe's teachings, they'll recognize the Rebbe as the true first 21st century leader. Yes, the Rebbe passed away in the 20th century, but the teachings live on, and their relevance cannot be more relevant than ever as they are today. Due to our challenges, whatever was going on in the 20th century is now even accelerated. Technology is a great gift, but how to use it. Think about these 5 principles. Commit, especially during these days, to doing something in that regard. Looking into your heart and soul, introspection for your mission. Taking initiative, not just being on the sidelines as a spectator. Persistence, being persistent, looking for the opportunities in everything around us. And finally, keeping your sights on the destination. We were promised, we were told, that when we do our part, we will tip those scales. And it will lead the world, the words of Maimonides, to redemption and salvation for the individual and for the whole. Personal and global redemption. May we merit in the schus of these special days, the 3rd of Tammuz coming up, which this event, one people, one heart, that our unity and our diversity, together, we can march toward the Geula. And tonight, the 80th anniversary of the Rebbe's arrival to America, miraculous arrival, beginning a new revolution, a new stage in the fusion of heaven and earth. Basi Legani, the discourse the Rebbe said 70 years ago, come to my garden, that the world will not just be a home, it'll be a garden with delight and pleasure. May we merit that immediately, especially through our efforts, through our coming together in such a unified way. So peoples of Washington and Oregon and Alaska and Idaho and British Columbia, as well as all others that are celebrating these days and honoring the Rebbe, may our unity and diversity, that one heart, that one people, be the container that draws down all the blessings. God bless you. Be healthy, be strong, and fulfill the purpose for which you were put on this earth in the fullest possible way. I don't see any better way to honor the Rebbe and all that the Rebbe committed to and sacrificed for that we honor during these days. Be blessed, be well. Thank you so much.
In conclusion, we hope you leave tonight inspired by the Rebbe's unique ability to see every situation in a positive light, to perceive tremendous opportunity in the face of challenge, and immense potential in every person. The Rebbe also taught us that actual deed is paramount. As such, we would like to conclude the evening with a positive resolution. Consider this. What makes a Jewish home Jewish? There's a mezuzah on the doorpost, books of Jewish wisdom on the shelves, guests are welcome, and when a needy soul knocks on the door, he doesn't leave empty-handed. And then there's a little box or tin can sitting on a counter somewhere. Every day, a little spare change gets dropped in there, plus a few more coins just before Shabbat. When it's full, it goes to a good cause, whichever the family chooses. There are, of course, other ways to give charity. What's so special about the pushka? A charity box in a home or office, the Rebbe taught, redefines the entire space. It's no longer just a home, just an office. It's a center of kindness and caring. As we conclude the evening, let's ensure our spaces, both home and office, have visible and accessible charity boxes to remind us to give daily. Better to give 1 penny a day for 100 days than to give $1 once in 100 days. Why? Because every time your hand does an act of giving, it becomes more and more a giving hand. Wishing you a fantastic summer and a good night.